Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Online Coaching Congress. And my speaker for today, who is an amazing coach, he's actually an anxiety coach. He helps people specifically who suffer from anxiety and anxiety-related conditions that may be manifesting in various ways as well. But she's an incredible soul. I've come across her and we've spoken at events together. And I thought it'd be wonderful for her to share some of her coaching journey and telling you about, how she got into this role, what she's doing, how she does it, sharing some of her kind of best tips as well, and perhaps to introduce you to that world as well. If you're thinking of that's perhaps what you want your niche to be, and you want to know more information as well, then I'm sure Priya can help get you give you the wisdom you need to help get you started. But first off, Priya, why don't you just give everyone a quick introduction about who you are, what it is you do exactly, because you could probably do a lot more justice than I just gave it. So please do share.
Yeah, so I'm Priya Amlani. I'm an anxiety specialist and I work very closely with children, parents, and adults. And talking about my journey, my background is a qualified optometrist. So I worked in Hillingdon Hospital in the pediatric clinic for 10 good years. I did private locum work. So I was an optometrist for 20 years. I suffered from anxiety myself and I had personal issues and I had relationship issues. I hadn't recognized the anxiety before actually. And I did NLP to help myself, and it was so powerful and it was really, really helpful. So I thought, oh, it would be nice to help. And I started working with friends and family, no niche at that time. And I worked with a girl or a lady now who had a stammer and her stammer went and I thought, oh my god, this thing works. So I started taking more of an interest. But what really came about is in my pediatric clinic, the children clinic, I was naturally using some of the techniques to calm the kids down because it's very frightening in hospital. Before they come to see me, they have particular drops put in their eyes, so it's very worrying. They're already upset that somebody's put some horrible drops in their eyes, so they're already quite anxious about what I'll do next. But all parents will make a comment like, oh my god, how many kids do you have? You're so calming. And I knew from that time on that it's something I wanted to do and I wanted to help parents and children. I didn't know how I would go around it, but I knew that was something I was looking into and I wanted to help them and manage the whole anxiety. So I started really looking into the importance of mental health compared to physical health because obviously my job was very about eyes and seeing and very physical, and I started looking into mental health and the importance of that. So that's how I started doing the coaching and got into coaching slowly and started working with friends and family and things like that. So that's how I got into it.
So that's like a beautiful story, of course, and as with many coaches as well, their coaching journey often starts with their own personal trauma or a life event which causes them to go down this path, as was with myself also. But I wanted to just call back to what you mentioned about kind of anxiety, because I think it's good to give it a definition, because someone may be watching this and actually be feeling things, but actually not realize that perhaps they're feeling anxiety. So what in your definition is anxiety? What are the signs that someone might see, the feelings they might have? What is it that they're actually going to experience?
So the way I talk about anxiety with the clients I work with or the parents I work with about their children is anxiety is a perceived threat. When you feel something is going to happen, so some people call it worries, but they're overly worried, they're overly concerned. But anxiety is when it presents itself in two ways. Either you avoid the situation, so you will be like, no, I'm not going to school. In terms of kids, there's an anxiety about school, or social phobia or social anxiety will present like, I'm not going to public places, I won't come on a Zoom call, I will avoid a situation. That's when the worries become an anxiety. Or there's a lot of what if questions before, there's a lot of concerns all the time. What if they laugh at me? What if I get it wrong? What if nobody plays with me? What if, depending on the type of anxiety, like selective mutism in children, this is where children don't speak. There's an anxiety about not speaking. They avoid speaking because they're going through, what if people laugh at me? Or what if I don't say the right words? Or what if I'm disapproved? Or, there's a variety of what ifs that go through your mind. So that's what happens in our minds, or you hear that in your family. But some people have physical symptoms. There'll be tummy aches. So for myself, we didn't know it was anxiety all my life. I used to get tummy aches as a child. And we just thought, born and brought up in Kenya, we didn't talk about mental health. It's like, oh, I wonder what it is, has she eaten something, things like that, or she's just sensitive, she's got a sensitive stomach. But for me, it was tummy aches. For some people, it's shaking, they shake. Some people get panic attacks. So it's not black and white. They could be a variety of signs and symptoms. But the best way for you to recognize it is, do I have this need to avoid something and I find an excuse? Or, like in relationships, like if you suddenly say you're dating, for example, right? And you know this, and then you have to be introduced to the family and you're very anxious. You somehow start arguing or end up having disagreements, or you don't want to go, you start a fight and you don't even know why you're doing it. But these are all ways to avoid going. But what's going underneath is probably the anxiety.
That's really fascinating as well. And you touched upon the fact that obviously, children can experience it, adults can experience it. It can manifest in a variety of ways, and sometimes it can be just a mental thing, but also can manifest as physical symptoms as well. I can concur with that. I don't know about you, but when I first started stand-up comedy, the first few times, and I used to have a lot more fear around public speaking. And don't get me wrong, I still do, and in the best possible way now. It's the kind of fear which I embrace. But there are people out there for them, to, perhaps even speak on Zoom or, speak in front of an audience might be the most frightening thing on planet Earth. And I suppose that for them could be their level of anxiety. But the other thing that you mentioned as well, which I know for me, the way it manifests physically was the knots in my stomach. That's how I know, oh man, like this is I'm really feeling it now, especially just in that last couple of minutes just before it's about to happen. You really feel that knot in your tummy. It's so tangible as well. So it's easy to recognize some of these symptoms and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you about bit more about your personal journey and what you went through, and especially the NLP. So would you say, by the way, that NLP is your main go-to tool that you use when it comes to helping others as well?
I think it's changed over the years. So NLP is my training. That's where I'm an NLP master practitioner, and I use that predominantly. But over the years, I've started looking into things like the three principles, I Heart principles. So my approach is changing, and it depends on where a person comes and presents. So for the coaches who are listening to this, you know when somebody's at a cause of the problem or effect, and it's where they are in the situation, then you choose your tools accordingly. But eventually I really want to help them understand that every experience we have, every single experience we have in our lives is because of our thinking, not because of someone or something. And I think, but not everybody's ready for that understanding. It took me years to get to that understanding myself. So I think I take it depending on how somebody's presenting, because some people have been through loads of coaching, they've been through loads of sessions. I get a lot of clients who've had CBT, who've been on the NHS, talking therapies, etc., but they've not quite got the results. They struggle to keep applying the strategies, and that person's ready. They know deep down it's not just about strategies, it's about deeper understanding. So I take it as it comes with each client.
Yeah, and that's an important thing as well, because you got to know who's ready for what, and sometimes a bit of a dipping a toe in the water can help. But I love what you said about it does begin and start with the mind as well. This is where most of my coaching is centered is around mindset and teaching people around that, especially our story, self-talk, those kinds of areas, which is so fundamental and so important. But what I wanted to ask you is, like, what is your why? What is your purpose? Why do you do this? Why is coaching such a big part of your life? Like, what's driving you to do this?
I enjoy it. I love making the difference to people and to families. I believe that when I work with one person, I'm impacting the whole family, because I always task them to go and teach it to their own families so they can imbibe it. And for me, it's about really making that difference, because I think mental health plays such a significant role. But as a community, in the Asian community, it isn't something that was talked about openly. And for me, I think it is really about bringing it out there and talking about it and making it okay. And that's why the whole career shift, I stopped the optometry completely to do this. And I've been doing this full time for 2 years, because I do love the difference we make. And don't get me wrong, some days are tough. You go and you think, oh my God, I wish I could do more. But as I understand and realize that everybody's resilient, and my job is just to help them see that resilience, that pressure on myself has decreased, so I'm enjoying the process more. But it's just really about mental health for me, and having a good childhood.
And that being one of the hot topics at the moment as well, especially with everything going on, I think that this is just one of the biggest things. This is almost like for me is almost like the true pandemic in many ways. And I say to people that it's, for me, it's not about the virus as such. It's that the fear, anxiety can actually lower our immune system, scientifically proven. So actually that makes things worse, and because we're bombarded with so much information, it actually makes it even harder. So I see my job as helping people to strengthen their mindset so that their immune system is impacted in the most positive way. They feel better. They don't feel so worried about getting it. They feel like, okay, if it happens, it happens. And of course, don't get me wrong, I know it's a horrible, horrible thing, but I think we could do a lot of service to people by reminding them that actually, if you take care of your well-being first and looking after yourself, of course, doing all the things, vitamin D, and your mindset, meditation, relaxation, all that kind of stuff will make a big difference as well. But it will help ultimately and really, make a bigger impact, in my opinion, than almost a vaccine can. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know this is just a bit my personal opinion, but we won't delve too much into that. I'm
But I think
digressing.
there's an element of truth there, but I also think it's about recognizing that we're all resilient. We are human beings resilient. We've been through various pandemics. Our parents have been through them, right? And they've survived it. And I think it's when we empower people to realize that we are resilient, we know what to do, we know about sanitation, this is all about common sense. And I take a slightly different angle. I don't want people to feel like they have to have a walk or they have to do meditation to feel good about themselves. But it's about being present in anything you're doing in that moment. So you could be very mindful about your cooking or walking or talking in this conversation, but knowing deep down that anything that's thrown at me, I'm resilient and I'll be all right. And I think that is really an understanding. We're all born with that resilience. We know how to survive, and we will survive it for sure. But it's really interesting. We look at this, and going back into what we were saying a few minutes ago about anxiety, is I take another angle because of my background in optometry and behavioral optometry. This is where we look at children with dyslexia, dyspraxia, tracking issues, and stuff. I came across something called retained reflexes or primitive reflexes. So, the importance of child development from that time you're born to the time you're walking and slightly after, and the impact on that on your mind. Because there's some people, they're doing everything they can to have a good mindset, but for some reason they still can't feel good. They still have that anxiety kicks in. They've done their affirmations, they've done their self-talk, they've done everything, but it kicks in. And this is when I bring retained reflexes into my work, which is where we look at how, because you haven't been through your development stages, a primitive reflex is a reflex we're born with to protect us, because your mind still thinks you are in that protective mechanism. So we integrate that through floor exercises. And I learned that through my coaching, because as coaches, we can become very much like, okay, this is it and this works and do it this way. But we have to be open as coaches to realize that it is a mind-body connection. We have to look at the brain, we have to look at the body, we do have to look at the mindset and bring it all together. And I think when I started doing that, I started getting even more success. And I think that's been really a great learning for me, that we do have to look. So hence why when you say look after your body, take your vitamin D's, look after immunity, that is your body. You need a good body to have a good mind, and vice versa. Yeah.
Absolutely, and very good point, well made, and very, very true as well. Very, very true. So what would you say to someone right now, perhaps even and some people can get, and I've seen this happen, some people getting into a vicious cycle about this, which is that what I mean, two-pronged attack to this question. What would you say to someone who perhaps is looking for a coach, wants a coach, but is feeling anxiety about getting a coach? And what would you say to people that is the benefit of coaching in general to them? specifically anxiety as well, but also in general, why should people get a coach? What is it that you think, and what is your selling point to people that the power of coaching is? What's your take on that?
So, okay, let's take it in bits. So, when you're looking for a coach, I think it's very important to make that initial call to see if you resonate with the person, right? So, my approach is we do an initial call. If they're happy with my approach and the way I work, great, book it. If not, it's not a problem. I don't tend to upsell in that way. I don't convince people why they should have me. I think people have to do their own research. And I also think that if you've done a couple of sessions and you feel like, you know what, I'm not connecting, you have to be honest. Because we have to know that everybody, and I speak because I see a lot of clients who've been and had other sessions, they've been to counselors or psychotherapists or other places and coaches, and they've come to me. And I think sometimes as coaches, we forget, we feel like we have to fix it for them. And then we start to put that pressure, but you haven't done your stars, so you haven't done your strategies. And if you did what I told you, it would have worked. And I think I've learned that, I've grown from that I realized that actually everybody is resilient. And that's what I said, it's moving from the NLP to an understanding that all human beings are resilient. We have our innate well-being within us. My job is to show them that mirror and show them the opportunities to find that. Because I used to be like that before. You would go and say, okay, you must go and do this task and you must do your diary X, Y, and Z. And then they're getting anxious about seeing me because they're like, I haven't done it. Will I let her down? Does it mean it's not going to work? I'm getting them attached to a process. I'm doing more disjustice to it, right? And we have to start looking at this, because I've been there as a coach where we say, if you do this, 100% it will work. It may not work in their environment for them. If they're getting attached, so they feel like, for example, in the lockdown, the first lockdown, right? We all start going for our one walk a day in the UK, because I know this will be watched around the world. We were allowed the one walk. When you go for your walk, you felt good, you were present. Initially, we saw people sharing their images of beautiful flowers and pictures, and like, oh, this was amazing. And then suddenly it became about, I have to go for my walk. If I don't go for my walk, it means my well-being is not there. And if I don't go for my walk and do my 5,000 steps, that means my well-being is not there. That's us attaching our well-being to something outside of us, and that's the problem, right? So the key is find somebody you resonate with where you are, because some people will need strategies, will need you to hold you accountable, right? But also to make sure you're not getting reliant on a coach. I always say to my clients, if I notice you're starting to use me as a crutch, because some people do, and we have to be conscious as coaches not to make money like that, because, we don't want to be the crutch for other people. We don't want them to get, oh, I need to see Priya to have my fix. No, they have to be independent.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. And I actually use the analogy, and I say to people that, when people come to me for coaching as well, for me, it's like almost trying on a piece of clothing. Go try 3 or 4 first, before you sign up, because I may not be the right person for you. Even if we have rapport in the first 30 minutes, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have it after 2 or 3 sessions. So go speak to people as well. Just know what's out there and then make an informed choice, because it's easy to make an impulse. And that's the thing as well. And that's a mistake I made very recently, where I, as you know, my wife and I got a puppy recently, and after being extremely sleep deprived for about 2 weeks, I ended up booking a dog trainer, and it was the first one I came to, because it was just a bad decision made in the impulse of the moment, because I was just a bit stressed. But that's what can happen as well, especially if you're feeling low and down. It's easy to make a bad decision. So I think it's important to remind people, just take a moment before you even ever say yes. Go away first, have a think, and then come back afterwards and think, right, is this person right for me? Maybe I'll speak to 1 or 2 others as well. Most coaches will give a 30-minute consultation free, some more, some less, but go find out, at least speak to a few, and then you're going to have a better sense of who is the right coach for you in that moment. And it's beautiful what you said about becoming and being mindful as a coach, not to become a crutch for someone, because again, I agree with you wholeheartedly that if you're not empowering that person to go away from you. And it's almost like the AA approach, that one of the final steps if you're part of the AA program is that you have to help someone else quit drinking. And that's what I say to people as well. It's almost like that saying, I think Denzel Washington says it, to each one teach one. So whatever you've learned from me, go teach someone else, because this is the way you're going to retain it, and it's going to keep reminding yourself and empowering yourself as well. So very true, very, very important stuff. So what are your I know we briefly touched on it, but I wanted to ask you, what are your kind of like few techniques that you kind of, or even messages I suppose as well, a few learnings you've had which are quite universal that you use, like 3 or 5 pieces of wisdom, techniques, or whatever it is that you use which you think are fundamental to what you do in coaching?
Okay, so one of the things that I have done recently is I've done some parenting programs that are evidence-based. One of them is called Strengthening Families, Strengthening Communities. And what I really like about that is the importance of a parent-child relationship. And I know I talk a lot about the parent-child relationship because I work a lot with parents and children, but that applies to adults as well, right? The greater the parent-child relationship, or the connections you have in any relationship, the better you will feel and have a better mental well-being around the people. So with your partners, it's very important to have that connection. So the focus of having great relationships around you, but with all relationships we're looking at, or to overcome any anxieties or problem, we need to have good self-regulation. How do we regulate our emotions? Good self-esteem and social skills. And if you have those three, you won't have anxiety, right? So we have to work on those, because people present with anxiety, but what is the issue underneath? Is it self-regulation? Is it that you don't know how to regulate yourself because as a child or when you were younger, somebody made you need somebody to say, yes, it will be okay, for you to realize it would be okay. So that's self-regulation. We need to manage that. Or is it that I never feel good enough? So I think it's very hard to just say X, Y, and Z. But I think if we look at, as individuals for any area of life, if we look at self-esteem, social competence, and self-regulation, then it really helps. But a tip that I really, really like that anybody can use, and anybody can research it out there. It's something that I've come across recently. It's done by Dan Hughes. He was a psychotherapist or a psychologist actually who looked after foster kids. But it's a universal way of looking at things. He does a program, he talks about it as PACE, P-A-C-E. So playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. You have those 4 in any relationship, you'll be laughing. Things will be all right. A lot of it will start because if you feel accepted and you can accept others, a lot of the anxieties will drop. Just being playful about your mistakes. If you make a mistake, if you, like you were talking about stand-up comedy, you make a slight mistake, who else than you to know that you just laugh it out and joke about it, right? But that playfulness connects to people, right? Curiosity is about just being a detective. Why are you feeling like that? How come I'm feeling this way? What can I do differently? What is driving this? And empathy is really being okay with the feelings we're getting, not trying to solve it, or somebody not having to solve. We talk about empathy, but I think a lot of us mistake sympathy and empathy. So it's about really learning empathy for yourself and others, and I think it really makes a difference.
Powerful shares there, Priya. Very powerful. A lot of food for thought. And I wanted to round off with two further questions as well, which is and a 2-part question for the first one. What is it that everyone can get out of coaching, and from a personal perspective, but also from say a further perspective, like a corporate perspective? What can, because I'm a true believer that everyone needs a coach, and what is it also, say for an institution or a corporation of any kind, or whatever it might be, can get by hiring the right coaches to help their teams of people as well, to help their people, because especially with everything going on, I think it's more important than ever that we help and support people who need it. And so what do you think that an individual can get by getting a coach, and what do you think an organization can get by getting the right coaches on board to help their people?
Okay, so with the first one, I think a coach is your mirror. It's your compass that points you in the right direction. That's the principle I always go with. I'm a compass that will help you, point you in the right direction. We can be neutral. If somebody else in the family says the same thing, there's a lot of emotions attached to it, right? So I think the benefit a coach brings is they can be your mirror, they can point you in the right direction, but we know how to manage. We can be neutral about it, right? We can be neutral about a situation. Because if a parent, let's go back to anxiety, for example, if a child or an adult is having anxiety, their parents, I have adult clients, their parents will phone. The clients are in their 20s, 30s, but their parents are phoning for them and saying, my child has anxiety, right? And they're not coping and X, Y, and Z. And then you have to, as a coach, I'll be able to say, okay, I want to speak to them and see what's happening for them. Because for these parents, it might be they're projecting their own anxiety onto the child, feeling embarrassed that my child's not coming out with me, right? So I think a coach will be that compass for you. It will be that mirror for you who will really help. From a corporate perspective, I don't work in the corporate world, so I don't know if it's fair for me to answer that, but I think if employers supported people and helped organize coaches for them, I think it'll be great. I think people will work better. Their morale will be better, the productivity will be better. If you know that there's somebody who struggles with doing Zoom sessions and Microsoft Teams or whatever, like interaction on them, and you've organized that for them, you've shown empathy as an employer and organized a space for them to speak, right? To go and get some help, you will see productivity improve, and employers are looking for that. If somebody's mentally well, then they're going to get on better with others. You won't have those outbursts of anger and frustration happening. Because sometimes it's so easy to say, oh, that person is so flippant or they're angry. But actually, what's driving below? So a coach in a corporate would be able to dig that and help you with that.
Beautiful, beautiful sentiment. And I just want to say, by the way, Priya, for the record, that I think you articulate yourself so well and you make your points so salient that anyone could understand them. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much for being a part of the Online Coaching Congress and for sharing your wisdom, your pearls of knowledge, and giving your time and energy to help people who are perhaps considering a career in coaching or looking as a coaching as a way to help their organization or whatever it might be. And my last question then, I guess, to you is, what is the one message you want to leave here today to share with the entire world? If the world was watching this right now, the entire world, I mean, everyone in the world, what is the one message you would love to share for everyone to hear right now? What do you think it is that people need?
I think anybody and everybody listening, I think it's very important that we realize that we are resilient. We have it in us. Our innate well-being is there. It's just clouded with our misguided thinking and attachment. So instead of looking for things outside of you, look within. All the answers are there.
Beautiful. There was a quote that came out at the beginning of lockdown: if you can't go out, go within. That was it, or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, beautiful message. I love that. And I just wanted to say thank you once again for being part of the Online Coaching Congress. How can people reach out to you?
No, thank you for having me. So I have a website, amlanicoaching.com. All my details are on there. My email address, my phone numbers, it's all on there. I go by the same Facebook page as well, but I also have a closed Facebook group where I support people, and it's called Overcoming Anxiety and Positive Parenting. So you're welcome to reach me out on there. Look up Priya Amlani and you'll find me.
Beautiful. Thank you again so much for that. It's been an honor and a pleasure interviewing you today. And definitely, I think to everyone out there, watch this space. I think Priya is going to go on to do even more incredible, amazing things. So do connect with her. And I just wanted to say one more time, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely.
All righty, time to end the recording. See you later.